morning. My name is Sandra Flansburgh. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. Welcome to First Unitarian Church, where our mission is to explore the eternal, nurture community, and pursue the common good, especially now. We welcome you in your brokenness and in your wholeness, no matter who you have been, who you are, or who you are becoming. We greet you today with love. There are a few important events today following the service. If you want to learn more about the ministerial transition, stay here in the sanctuary for a Q&A with the transition team. If you are new to the congregation and want to learn more about getting involved and maybe even becoming a member, you're invited to the New Friends gathering in Corley Commons on the lower level, down the stairs. Finally, if you have Medicare questions, you can attend an information session in the upstairs chapel. I'd like to extend a special welcome to everyone who is watching us on YouTube this morning. Please introduce yourself in the comments and let us know where you're joining us from. If you're in OKC, what neighborhood are you in? Or if you're elsewhere, what city are you in? Welcome to First Unitarian, OKC. And now the prelude prepares us for worship. We light our chalice in Midtown, Oklahoma City, on land that was home to first Americans, including the Apache, Caddo, and Wichita, on land that was taken from the Muskogee and Seminole and other removed and relocated peoples. We light the chalice as a symbol of our sacred time together, the words of Albert Schweitzer. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the chalice within us. And Diane Broyles and Betty Talent are lighting the chalice in honor of their birthdays this week. And we'd also like to celebrate Betty Scott.
Most of you know that I am Jonna Lou Johnstone, she, her, your worship and pastoral care minister. What you don't know is that I had one eye done on cataract surgery this week and I have the other eye next week. So if I'm like juggling around trying to figure out how I'm reading and how I'm looking at you, then that's what's happening. Also this week, well, as your worship and pastoral care minister, I know that many people are hurting this morning, this week, and my hope is that this service might offer some healing, some hope, and some path forward for you. And I begin with the words of Reverend William Schultz. Come into this place of peace and let its silence heal your spirit. Come into this place of memory and let its history warm your soul. Come into this place of prophecy and power and let its vision change your heart. In times such as these, it is good to be together and to remember that our claim on this country is as strong as anyone else's. And one way to recognize that is on this day before Veterans Day to remember those who have served in the military. And if you are here and a veteran, and if you're willing or able, I'd invite you to stand or raise your hand, and online to type it into the chat. We recognize your service and thank you. To remind us that we are together and not alone, I invite you to greet one another, perhaps with a special greeting to veterans here in the sanctuary and online, tenderly, respectfully, kindly, imagining a world where all our interactions can always bring that same tenderness, respect, and kindness. We will end the greeting time with our first hymn, number 318.
I'm here. I thought you were getting me. We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of grace.
amen. I like that. This morning's story is for all of us a reminder of what can be if we imagine and create it. One day in Alabama in 1968, and that sounds like a very long time ago for some of you, but I remember 1968. As farmers worked in their fields, a small airplane swooped into view and papers fluttered down out of the plane into the sky and came swirling down to earth all around the startled farmers. The papers showed an eagle and names of candidates. They were flyers about the upcoming elections. The pilot wanted people to know who he liked the best. The pilot was John L. Cashin. He hoped those farmers would vote for the candidates of the National Democratic Party, a political party he founded to help African Americans run in Alabama's elections. He wanted the farmers and everyone else to know that these candidates, if elected, would use their positions in government to make life better and more fair for the farmers and their families and their neighbors. So John Cashin was not only a pilot, he was a dentist too, and a husband and a father of 3 children, and he himself had run for mayor in his town, Huntsville, Alabama. He did not win. Later in his life, he would run for governor of the state of Alabama. He didn't win that election either. But then again, he had not expected to win. In those days in Alabama, African Americans had little chance of winning public office, even though about a third of Alabama's people were black. The Alabama state government had no elected officials who were African American. Very few blacks ran for election. Very few blacks could even vote in elections. They were kept away by unfair laws, Jim Crow laws, and by threats of violence by white people who did not want their black neighbors to vote. So, with so little chance to win, why did John L. Cashin run for mayor and then for governor? Well, John was an activist who understood the power of public witness. And he had made a promise when he was 11 years old. 11 years old. Who here is at least 11 years old? Quite a few of you are at least 11 years old. He had made a promise when he was 11 years old to do whatever he could to get blacks involved in the political process and to speak out against the injustices that kept them away. Every time John Cashin put his name on a ballot and his picture on those election posters and flyers, he caught the dreams of other African Americans in Alabama. Campaign speeches gave him a chance to make some noise for justice and speak out against laws that were not fair to African Americans. When John Cashin formed the National Democratic Party, he chose as its symbol an eagle, the well-known symbol of American freedom. With eagles printed all over their flyers and signs and posters, the National Democratic Party made sure even those who could not read could vote for justice-loving candidates, the ones with the eagles by their names. Soon, African Americans in Alabama were running for sheriff, city councils, and judgeships, and the National Democratic Party helped get many elected. Cashin did not have to witness alone. His family, his Unitarian Universalist congregation in Huntsville, Alabama, and many other UUs and friends joined him. They came to his rallies, made their own speeches to support him, and helped him raise money to run for elections. Like John, they believed that to witness against the wrongs committed against African Americans was an important way to show their faith. Over time in Alabama, more African Americans voted. More African Americans ran for public office and won, and as more Black people became part of the Democratic and Republican parties, John Cashin's National Democratic Party was less important for public witness, and it was dissolved. John Cashin died in 2011. We can be a new generation witnessing for justice. Every time we speak up against a wrong or support people to speak up for themselves, we are part of John Cashin's legacy. He witnessed for the justice he wanted to see in his community and in our nation, an America where everyone's vote counts. Now, I'm just going to do a little note here. Note in the order of service, the children and youth are not leaving until after the offertory. We will sing them out after the offertory.
Good morning. I'm Tempe Nichols-Rude. I'm a member of the Sustainable Living Group, and I am a 75-year-old white woman with mostly brown hair, wearing a bright yellow jacket and a multicolored shirt. Every Sunday, we take an offering. Since 2002, all the cash and designated checks from that offering have gone directly to external nonprofit organizations that do good work, our Change for Change partners. November's Change for Change partner is Voice. Voice is organized in civic engagement. It's a coalition of dues-paying congregations, nonprofits, worker associations, and schools that have come together out of a deep sense of mission and concern about the pressures that families face in the Oklahoma City metro area. They work together to better understand those pressures by listening to the experiences of the people in our member institutions. They then engage in those impacted in better understanding the issues and learning to work effectively for improvements that will benefit all. While they differ on some issues, they focus on the areas in which they can find the common ground that allows them to work together. They develop the leadership skills of our own members who work effectively within the democratic process with civic leaders and public officials on issues of concern to families. For those of you who are in the sanctuary with us today, in just a moment we'll be passing the offering plate. And if you're watching us online, please make your gift by sending a check to First Unitarian, just write Change for Change on the memo line, or make an online payment through our website at oneuc.org. I was asked to give a bit of commentary about my involvement with Voice. Most of my initial experience with Voice came from attending house meetings where group members identify and discuss those issues in their lives and families. Some of these issues become topic of concern for the wider Voice task forces, always exploring the issues that can be addressed and in some situations solved. Like later, I began attending accountability sessions, like the one First UU held before the local primary elections, where we filled the sanctuary to capacity with members of our partner organizations. Most recently, I joined the Voice mental health team, headed by our own Becky Talent. It was sort of a no-brainer for me. It seems I've been a clinical social worker all of my life, even before I received my MSW 51 years ago. I was always the person friends called when they wanted to talk about their problems. And in 1968, kind of a memorable year for me as well, my roommate in a program here in Oklahoma City called Summer in the City, where we worked with children from low-income families on the northeast side. My roommate at Corpus Christi Convent told me that she was gay and was involved with an older woman in the program. Later that fall, when they broke up, she died by suicide. I could not find a single resource in the OSU library about lesbians. That was the second time that semester I almost dropped out of college because it wasn't relevant. And what I was learning there was not relevant. Then, when I was in my first year of graduate school, my stepfather took his life after being discharged from detox for about the 10th time. These experiences led me to my long career in mental health and substance abuse programs, working in public and private hospitals, outpatient programs, private practice, and even emergency rooms. Most of those programs have different missions and names now. In any case, I thought I could bring some institutional knowledge to Voice's mental health team, and I found I could learn a lot from other members too. I spent my last 10 years at the Oklahoma City VA hospital, so my information about local and Oklahoma resources was lacking. I'm glad to have shared some of my historical knowledge of programs, especially glad I've learned a lot more about current mental health practices. So please find an issue that you would like to work on and volunteer for Voice. Thank you.
And now we'll sing the children out.
Lay
at all these kids. And teachers. Wow. That is a healthy church. What a week. Whatever you're feeling, whatever I'm feeling, it's all appropriate. Exhaustion, fear, despair. We started the week with climate change-provoked weather catastrophes. We've been through months of an election cycle with endless warnings about the end of our democracy, our country as we know it, and then the results. I, for one, have had my nerves jangled and my emotions on overdrive. I'm working really hard to avoid apocalyptic thinking. That was hard this time, given our valid fears of what's ahead. In particular, I fear for my trans and non-binary friends and relatives. I fear for those souls who can get pregnant. I fear for my Mexican, Central American, and South American friends here in the metro area, those without documents and those with them. I fear for my Guatemalan daughter. And it's not just us. My dear friend Claudia, a Mexican single mom living in Canada and who is watching via YouTube today, asked me to lift up what this election means not just for the US, but for all Latin Americans and globally. We know an economic crash here impacts their economies, which are much more fragile than ours. Draconian immigration policies here can cause waves and struggling in other countries. So we need to proactively embrace our neighbors, especially our vulnerable neighbors here and elsewhere. But I can't do the work ahead when all seems lost. I must remember that the sun will rise tomorrow, we'll wake up, we'll need to take our next steps. So what I'm doing now is working to remember that we are all people, human beings, people who struggle, are complex, make mistakes, don't do what we hope they'll do, but who can change and are not the enemy. Most everyone wants to feel seen, heard, and part of a community. Each one of you should do what you need to do to protect yourself. For myself, I don't want to see anybody as the enemy. That doesn't mean I don't disagree with them and fight against them, but they're not the enemy to me. I'm giving myself time to struggle, to feel. I'm taking time to shift away from stress eating and skipping the why to taking care of my body and soul. I'm also looking for little ways to care for those around me. I'm working hard not to react emotionally to challenges, but to give grace to others, because Lord knows I need it myself. But ahead there is work to do. We always have work to do. I know that it's crucial now that we move into action on any number of things that endanger lives, rights, and more. But even if Kamala Harris had won, we had urgent work because we live in Oklahoma and because even good leaders need accountability and need to be pushed to do the right thing. My path forward is through community organizing. I found organizing to be both hard and joyful, and to be a practice that both challenges me and is sustainable for me. It feeds me in many ways. When I was a leader with Voice, I appreciated that it's local, so it's very tangible. It teaches ways to break down huge problems into doable and winnable issues. As an organizer with Voice, I loved identifying new leaders and helping them gain the skills and experiences. Most of all, this work is done in community. I've experienced how that makes change more possible, and it's also healing. It heals my soul, and I think it helps to heal communities. By sitting down with someone else, being curious about them, listening intently, and sharing experiences, something good happens. Just to do that one thing with someone else, in our congregation, for example, is community building. In the wider community, it's been a huge learning experience for me to begin to understand how people in the same city can live such different experiences. The conversations where I'm getting to know and care about someone else at the same time that I'm learning about their different beliefs is, to me, healing. I love that it starts relationships and dialogue rather than shutting doors and isolating. I also believe that's where we need to start to move towards a healthier and more caring democracy. It's possible. It will take great effort and be uncomfortable at times, but it begins right here, right now.
feel like I've been to church. This morning, many of us may feel that love is too weak to withstand the horrors we fear. Yet only love can withstand the horrors we fear. We hold as precious every single human being and the earth and all that grows on it, from the giant sequoias to the delicate mosses to the ferocious predators to the snails and slugs and bugs. We especially want to remember and hold as precious those people who are most threatened on account of their gender identity, their race, the situation in life. We hold them in our hearts, and as necessary, we promise to hold them literally in whatever safety we can. I offer words from the Reverend Daniel Gregoire, addressed to that powerful spirit, the spirit of love. Spirit of love, help us never to forget we are your voice, hands, eyes, and ears and heart upon this one precious earth. Help us to live in peace together and serve one another, and to see the holy light in everyone, even when those holy lights are especially hard to see. Help us to accept difference and even delight in it the way you do. Most of all, no matter how things go, help us to be compassionate during these and other challenging times. Amen. Ashe. Blessed be. So I heard someone say on Election Day this week, today is one of those days. They said it in the context of it being a time when we exercise our choice and make our voices heard, but they said it with a weariness and trepidation that was heavy. Today is one of those days. Like, casting a vote is one of the most difficult things we could possibly do, and sometimes it is. Choosing lessers of evil, making sense of legalese and constitutional provisions, approving the retention of judges we've never heard of. Someone said the Arizona ballot took 35 minutes to complete. Who's got time for that? Yet this is the bare minimum requirement of democracy. Competitive democracy, some have called it, the brand of democracy that considers the selection of leaders to be the central function, if not the only function, of democracy, which doesn't leave a lot for the rest of us to do, or to think, or to believe. Competitive democracy sees our responsibility as met if we vote for some people to represent us, to make decisions on our behalf. Of course, we can't make the decisions for all policies or laws alone individually. We need a solution that we are all, or many of us anyway, working toward together. So someone has to make those choices. Maybe we don't want to make any of those decisions. The problems are too complex. The answers require too much of us. Really? Do I have to do more than recycle to save the earth from climate change and environmental devastation? Some of us don't realize that making those decisions ourselves is even a possibility. The Black justice maker Adrienne Marie Brown said on a pre-election podcast, "We're trying to change what's at the very top of this structure, the president." But I'm like, but no one's actually practicing democracy. Yo, do you sit down together and talk about how you're spending the resources of your home and your community? Do you talk about how you're agreeing to keep each other safe? Do you talk about how you're agreeing to share time and who has decision-making power, and do you make those decisions together? So even the people running for office are often people who've never actually practiced democracy in that way. Okay, so I'm about to say something really radical. Authoritarianism may simply be the most extreme form of competitive democracy. Often around the world, and even here, leaders who were democratically elected have taken greater control than they were granted. And sometimes voters are glad they do. Here, you're elected, take care of everything. Make all the decisions, fix the problems. They're too big for us little people. And I think that may be part of what U.S. voters were conveying in this election. Take care of it, because we can't solve it, we've got a mess. Now granted, some of the messiness is a mirage that was conjured by the workings of news media and lying politicians, compounded by the very real attitudes of racism, misogyny, homophobia, and transphobia. Some of it, though, is no mirage. Income inequality, people living paycheck to paycheck, increases in homelessness, lack of quality health care, housing prices, increases in insurance rates due to climate catastrophes, heck, increasing climate catastrophes. Americans, and for that matter, many others in the world, are not happy with the status quo, can't see their way out, and will gladly hand it over to someone who says, "I can fix it." However, we as a people have never agreed on what exactly the problems are, much less the solutions. Robert Paxton, who's foremost expert on Vichy France and the rise of fascism, has pointed out that Trump has a much more solid base than either Hitler or Mussolini had. This was pre-election, he said that. The people who voted for him experienced some kind of pain, inflation or financial insecurity, or maybe simply envy of people who have more, and are ready to hand over the solutions. We have to find a better way, a way that opens up possibilities beyond finding the right strong leader to make the right decisions and carry out the right programs. UU theologian Sharon Welsh writes in her book, After the Protests Are Heard, Enacting Civic Engagement and Social Transformation. Okay, I'm going to read a couple paragraphs here. What we who are liberal and progressive embody at our best is a beloved community of generative interdependence. There are alternatives to either emancipated individualism or authoritarian community based on fear, exclusion, domination, and control. At this moment in history, we can and are combating authoritarianism and exercising countervailing power. We are living for justice and saying no to hatred, no in our votes, no in our laws, no in our policies. And yet it is vital to remember that our no to hatred, fear, and violence is grounded in a deep, generative, and expansive yes. A yes to difference. A yes to the richness of diversity, to the gift of reason, to the joy of cooperation, to the deep soul satisfaction of compassion. So let me back up here and dig into this a little. I have to say, I love Sharon Welsh. I have heard her speak many, many times, and I've read her books, and I find her one of the best thinkers around, and she can be hard to follow. Her thoughts are complex and demanding. She spoke at an online conference that I was at for retired UU ministers recently, and the thing I kept hearing was, could she slow down? Literally, her mind works so fast, and the academic language can overwhelm. So, what we who are liberal and progressive embody at our best is a beloved community of generative interdependence. Beloved community has become a familiar, if overused and sometimes misused, phrase in UU circles and beyond. Originated by the idealist philosopher Josiah Royce in the early 20th century and popularized by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., beloved community is not a place of specific individuals, so much as a vision of universal peace, harmony, and love. It is what we aim for, not who we are, because we are going to remain imperfect individuals. I promise you, we are going to remain imperfect individuals. I don't want to get your hopes up. We try to be beloved community. We succeed in rare and passing moments. And that, to me, fits with the idea that the humanist theologian Anthony Penn suggests that liberation is not an outcome, but a process. We embody it by working toward it, not by achieving it. And this can be difficult for those of us who are goal-oriented and think we can achieve whatever we set our minds to. This is a process. We live into liberation. We live into beloved community. We will never be there completely, not in our lifetimes, maybe literally never. Okay, now generative interdependence, a beloved community of generative interdependence. What the heck? Let me start with the noun, interdependence, one of our newly declared UU values. Interdependence goes back, though, to the seventh principle, which we have long embraced, the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. Usually we think of that interdependence of earth and plants and animals and air and water, how our world interacts, producing and reproducing creatively in process, how we are dependent upon that world and interdependent with it. What, though, if that world were also a model for how we live into beloved community, interdependent, relying on each other? Those people who are demeaned and dismissed by some recent election winners, trans and queer people, immigrants, Black, Indigenous, people of color, women, are vital members of the interdependent beloved community. They contribute to the thought and to the action, not scapegoats or objects of pity, full functioning members of generative beloved community. Okay, I stuck that generative word back in there. Generative community does more than exist in its own context. It nurtures community, producing and reproducing it. Grounded in creativity, generative community creates new ideas, strategies, systems, and culture. What we who are liberal and progressive embody at our best is a beloved community of generative interdependence. That's a tall order. It calls us to imagination as well as to action. It requires that we have differences among us and know how to deal with them. That we embrace the richness of diversity even when it chafes a little. That we apply reason as well as compassion. That we cooperate. And that we let go of ego, because it's not about who's the leader. It's about how we get things done together. When I was serving the UU Fellowship of Manhattan, Kansas during the pandemic, I was working with a group of younger, energetic, well-informed community activists. I mostly supported and cheered them on and learned from them. Their leadership structures were loose at best, overlapping different organizations. Communication was all online. It was the pandemic. With effective use of various online tools from Discord to Zoom to Slack, I learned more about computers than I ever wanted to know. People volunteered for various actions and made them happen quickly. We made the County Board of Supervisors open up their process of live streaming their meetings by showing up and live streaming to Facebook to prove it was possible. We forced out one of the worst supervisors by exposing his racism and corruption. And this work demonstrated a kind of democracy to me that was more than voting for a representative to hold all the power. People with interests and talents empowering themselves and one another, unconcerned with who was leading the fight, taking on challenging problems creatively. And you know what? The whole thing was so fun. And that brings me around to that different model of democracy than simply voting for who will make decisions for us. Deliberative democracy. Think Vermont Town Hall. Think Voice House meetings. Think anywhere that people grow into leadership and make determinations about their lives with or without electoral power. People sitting together and talking about how to get their community needs met together. And deliberative democracy can apply in any context. Families or households, neighborhoods, cities, online groups. The rules are simple. Whoever has something at stake has a right to give input. That's not hard, is it? Whoever has something at stake has a right to give input. The implementation, well, that's a bit more challenging. How can we begin to talk together if talk turns quickly to yelling? How about if we don't have a shared reality? What if our education on civic engagement has been stifled? Yeah, a bit challenging. But I think the more that we can stay with the personal experiences of the people who are gathered together, the more effectively we can do that. And we can begin anywhere. I used to be kind of close-fisted around agenda when I was leading a workshop or meeting. And I've started learning to ask a group I'm leading, here's what I'm prepared, is that okay? It's a small change, inviting input, inviting buy-in, really, sincerely, invitationally. We can apply inclusive strategies, inviting, always inviting, in our resistance to the oppression that is bound to come. Shoot, we live in Oklahoma, it's already here. Another word from Adrienne Marie Brown. I want us to ask who benefits from our hopelessness, and to deny our oppressors the satisfaction of getting to see our pain. I want them to wonder how we foment such consistent and deep solidarity. I want our infiltrators to be astounded into their own transformations, having failed to tear us apart. We foment that solidarity that Brown talks about by really valuing that diverse, generative, interdependent, beloved community. But because it is broadly, we may have to redefine success to smaller movements, but because they're broadly shared, it will be more solid movement, harder to reverse or resist. And this has been going around on Facebook, but I have to remind you of it. The scene from Tolkien's Two Towers. The hobbit Frodo says, "I can't do this, Sam." And Sam replies, "I know, it's all wrong. By rights, we shouldn't even be here, but we are. It's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo, the ones that really mattered, full of darkness and danger they were, and sometimes you didn't want to know the end, because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad had happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come. And when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer. Those were the stories that stayed with you, that meant something, even if you were too small to understand why. But I think, Mr. Frodo, I do understand. I know now. Folk in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't, because they were holding on to something. And Frodo asks, what are they holding on to, Sam? That there's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for. Some of you know I live in Turner Falls Park in the southern part of the state. On Wednesday, I walked to the falls. Torrents of water fell in 2 or 3 places, and off in the right-hand corner there were tiny veil-like corpuscles weaving across the rocks. It was beautiful. Really, really beautiful. Only a week before our deluge of rain and the accompanying tornadoes, there had been only one very slight, frail line of water falling. With the rain, the falls had been refilled and refreshed. And I was reminded of the cycles of life that we live through, the deluges and droughts. It is nature's way, and we too are nature. In the words of James Baldwin, for nothing is fixed forever, forever, forever. It is not fixed. The earth is always shifting, the light is always changing. The sea does not cease to grind down rock. Generations do not cease to be born. And we are responsible to them because we are the only witnesses they have. The sea rises, the light fails. Lovers cling to each other, and children cling to us. The moment we cease to hold each other, the moment we break faith with one another, the sea engulfs us and the light goes out. Part of what I want to remind you this morning is that whatever is happening in the moment is of its very nature temporary, transient. That goes for the good and for the bad, for the beautiful and the ghastly. And we can work toward one or the other if we so choose. I hope I leave you with hope. And our final hymn is number 1017 in the Teal book, Building a New Way.
We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. Hate and greed and jealousy. We are working to be free. We can feed feed our every need. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. Start with love, that is the seed. We can feed our every need. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Without these, this world will die. Peace and freedom is our cry.
We extinguish our chalice flame, but not the light and love and community which burns in our hearts.
I leave you with the words of Rebecca Solnit. They want you to feel powerless and surrender and let them trample everything, and you are not going to let them. You're not giving up, and neither am I. The fact that we cannot save everything does not mean we cannot save anything, and everything we can save is worth saving. You may need to grieve or scream or take time off, but you have a role no matter what. And right now, good friends and good principles are worth gathering in. Remember what you love. Remember what loves you. Remember, in this tide of hate, what love is. Amen, ashe, and blessed be.
Amen.